So when the user is booking a flight and he says, hey, I want to have 5 seats, then we should take that number, 5, and decrease the remaining number of seats in the flight. So now go ahead into your flight controller, scroll a little bit down until you can find where we are adding bookings. So here in book, we go to the flight, and to the bookings, we add a new booking. And afterwards, after we have added a new booking, we should go ahead, take the flight again, and decrease remaining number of seats minus equals or decrement by DTO dot number of seats, right? So if I book 5 seats, the flight should have 5 seats less to offer. Now you can see that this isn't working, and it's not working because remaining number of seats is immutable. Well, you can click on that and press F12 to directly navigate to it. You can see we're using a record. So the properties inside here are not changeable after they got initialized. So remaining number of seats is immutable. That's the difference between a record and a class in C#. Now, if we want to go ahead and change that property here after initialization, we can simply make it mutable by creating public int, exactly the same name, remaining number of seats, make it a property, set get, and set it to remaining number of seats. So now we have a property, the value is directly correlated to remaining number of seats right here, the property, right? And I'm missing a semicolon right here. And it's a property which we can get and even set. So now once we save it and we come back here, we can see the red underline is gone because remaining number of seats is now switched from being immutable to being mutable. Now, for this domain validation rule, where we should not be able to overbook a flight, which we haven't solved yet, right? So let's say remaining number of seats is 2 or 5, and I'm having here DTO booking number of seats like 20, it would still work. So we could go into the negative range. So we definitely need to take care about that. But first of all, let me explain which error code or HTTP status that is. It's 409, which is conflict. Conflict indicates that a request could not be completed due to a conflict with the current state of the target resource. So we have a conflict here. We only have 5 numbers of seats left, and you want to decrease it by 20, which would go into a negative range, but a flight cannot have minus 15 remaining number of seats, right? That doesn't make sense. So we should now handle that scenario. Let's simply avoid overbooking right before we add the booking to the flight. So once we checked, hey, do we have a flight with that unique ID? And we don't have it, we return. And once we have it, we can also check if the flight dot remaining number of seats is smaller than DTO number of seats. So how many do you want to book, right? We can simply go ahead and return a conflict, which is status code 409, just as I said. We create a new object and say the message, since this should really be something unique for each scenario. The number of requested seats exceeds the number of remaining seats. So you try to book more seats than the flight has available, right? So those are the remaining number of seats. So let's say we have 5 left, and DTO is here our book DTO. So I entered like 15. Hey, I want to book 15 seats. And then it says, okay, you have a conflict. We only have 5 left and you want to book 15. So that doesn't work. And that conflict is returning 409. And this scenario here, this is our domain rule validation. That would also appear in your local airport. If you go and buy a ticket, like 5 tickets for a flight, and that guy at the airport is telling you, hey, we only have 2 seats left, then it's exactly this. The flight has 2 left, you want to book 5 seats, and the conflict is that the person is telling you, we only have 2 seats left, so go ahead and wait for the next flight or whatever, right? So it appears to both sides. And this is why it's a business problem, a so-called domain validation rule. Now let's try that out. In the flight controller, here we are already, scroll a little bit up, open up the flights list. Now we can take the very first one, which is going from Los Angeles to Istanbul, American Airlines, right? And here you can see that we have a random value, which is defining how many seats are available. Let's remove it and let's set it to 2. So we have 2 seats remaining for that flight. Let's run our application and let's try to book that flight, Los Angeles, Istanbul, in 2 scenarios, so that we really try out if it's now working and that our domain rule validation is working fine. So here we are. Let's search for flights and we got that Los Angeles to Istanbul flight. So let's click on book. You got 2 remaining seats, right? So let's just book it and let's try to overbook it with 10. So we got 2 seats left and I tried to book 10 seats, so that should not work. Let me open the console. Let me switch to the network tab. We just open it up a little bit more. And now let's click on book. You can see, well, we got a flight 409 error right here. And the message is saying the number of requested seats exceeds the number of remaining seats. So our message that we just have entered. So this is working fine. Now let's go ahead and try to book 1 flight or 1 seat. So number of seats 1. Let's click book. That seems to be working, right? So let's switch back to home, search for the flight again. Here you can see 1 remaining seat. That's because we are now decreasing the book information from the flight. So if I book 1 seat, we will now decrease that seat from the remaining seats of the flight. Book again. Let's try again 2. It's not working. Let's try to do 1 again. Book. It's working fine. Let's switch to home, search again. 0 remaining seats. Let me try to book 1. I cannot. I get an error. The number of requested seats is exceeding. So you can see that this is now working fine. For sure we need to go ahead into the Angular side of Vue and again add some validation here. Maybe even remove it if we don't have a remaining seat left, right? So next up, we again take care about the front end side. But now we have secured or improved our RESTful API by adding a domain validation rule.